Hello and welcome everyone. We'll wait for you to settle in. Thank you for spending your Sunday with us. We're here to celebrate a very special book with our authors present today on stage. It's called Get Kids to Play. And it shuns the linear structure of the book, which you'd expect out of any book in a bookstore. And it is structured like a toolkit because it wants to be in direct service of the community. It speaks to teachers, it speaks to parents, it speaks to community leaders, civic engagement leaders. And I think it's a very powerful tool today at a time when habitual physical movement is of crucial importance to children and adults alike. As the person who made the introduction said, sport is a lens through which we examine society. We can examine our biases, we can look at resilience, we can look at solidarity in the best and worst of times. Keeping in mind the audience of the book, just to gauge the people who are present here, how many of you identify as parents? Can we have a show of hands, please? Your hand has to be straighter. This is a session about sport. What is this? Go up. How many are teachers? Any teachers? How many play some kind of sport or do sport related? Whoa, that's a good one. And how many of you did you watch the Women's World Cup final here? Yeah, full house. I think everybody will take something out of this session, and that's the beauty of sport, right? It relates to all of us at some level. So to begin this conversation, Saumil, you talked about the fact that there's a very concerted effort to bring this book, to bring this discourse beyond the anti-elite sport arena. So how do you define and imagine play beyond sport? How do you do that?
First of all, thank you for everybody for being here, and thank you, Sonali. I think there's a need to define the words as well. One, very simply, if you think of axis of structure, play, and that's why it's called play and not sport. Play is most unstructured, most inclusive, and most fun, because kids drive the rules, they change the rules, and they decide. Kids of all ages decide. It gets structured with physical education, it gets even more structured with sport, and even more structured with elite sport, where there are very clear rules, where you can get banned, you can get a red card. So if you think of structure and almost inclusion and fun, it's the axis this way, right? And the idea is that play has been fundamental. Sport, elite sport has hijacked the narrative because of the commercial interest and because it's extremely inspiring as well. But in the process, 0.001% of the kids get the attention. The remaining 99.99% of the kids who want to play for fun are made to feel as if they should not be playing. They should play only if they're going to play for the country. But that's not the reason kids play, and that's not the reason kids should play. Kids should play for fun, for education, for life skills and so on. But the narrative has become very elite driven, and hence the need to kind of present an alternate view, which was the original reason kids played. Kids did not play for professional leagues. The professional leagues is the adult construct. Kids play for fun.
Vijay?
Good afternoon, everyone. And firstly, I'm so happy that the first row has kids for the session, so that's really nice. Continuing with what Saumil mentioned, all of us, and including the kids here, I don't think when you pick up a bat or you're going to play, I don't think you're even thinking of all those things, right? I mean, like, they could be far away, some dream, or you watch TV, or you have your poster in your room, but you're not playing and practicing and doing all that. So, like he said, I think it's an adult thing to quickly, capture that. Let's go 10 kilometers, join an academy, and so this adult stuff comes over there, right? On the contrary, if you just prevent that early specialization, that's one of the things we wrote in the book also, is how can parents, teachers, coaches, everyone, from school leaders to everyone, just push that early specialization, and maybe up until 12 or 14, just get them to play all the sports and do everything outdoor, and they will select. But I think we are like so aspirationally driven that the next kid who picks up the bat is Virat, the next guy who plays the ball is Messi. That's just it's very overbearing, right? And so what's happening through research, what we found is then the dropout rate is higher. So you started with wanting them to play, and you actually led them to the exit quickly. So those are my initial thoughts.
But there's a very interesting tension here, Saumil. I think I heard in one of your podcasts where you say that if people, schools specifically, if they are not looking at physical education in a serious way, akin to pedagogy, and what you do is provide a curriculum, provide a structure to how they can look at physical activity, right? So you are borrowing from the linguistics of sport education. You are borrowing from that elite sport, the vocabulary, the language is the same. So how do you manage the tension when you're building a toolkit?
Great research and good question. I think a couple of things. One is sport which was kid driven a generation ago has become adult driven. Right, kids can no longer go down to the neighborhood and play. Safety issues and bunch of other issues, availability issues, access issues. So it's now adult driven. That's one fundamental construct. So if the neighborhood play spaces are disappearing, where do kids play? The only place seems to be available is the PE class in the school. To your point, I think it's important to distinguish between coaching and teaching. Coaching assumes that as an athlete, could be a maths student, you're motivated to perform better and better, and I keep pushing you and you keep supporting my push. As a teacher, I have to assume that the class is not interested in my subject. I have to get them interested. In fact, the ones who are dropping out have to get more of my attention. Because the ones who are good will anyway play. They have their own internal engine going. The ones who are dropping out, the not so talented, not so trained, the girls dropping at a certain age, how do you keep them in? So if you think about the construct of structure and look at maths and science that has done it in India and globally, education has shown a way to have quantity and then you add quality, right? First include. So the school system is the only system where you can engage at scale. There is no other system. Try getting 40 kids together after school. Once a year for the birthday party is a nightmare. But think about that. Try getting 40 kids together every day, every evening, which used to happen growing up. It's no longer happening. So where is the adult construct for kids to come together and play? School PE period. Now, can we make this better? Can we make it fun? Can we make it inclusive and not make it elite, not make it competitive? Is the attempt that we're trying to do, because there's no other system. Where else? If not here, where?
I had a question to what Saumil said to the audience is, all parents who attended parent-teacher meetings, PTMs, how many times have you seen, along with science, math teacher, a PE teacher and a sports coach on the table? Never. One, that's good, one or two. But so that itself to me gives an indicator of where play and sport is. That's one. Second is they recognize all the children, let's say in assembly, math Olympiad, science Olympiad and all that. So the question is, again, sporting stuff is only towards a sports day, some only a spectacular competition that they have to win to become part of it. The saddest thing is the kids are watching this, the other kids are actually watching this inequality happening right in front. So when you go to a PTM, kid knows that sport is not important. It's not told, but they know it now. And so that itself is an indicator, and should that change is probably the first point.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I'm going back to my school days, which feels like eons ago. It's like every teacher kind of usurps the PE period when they don't have time to finish their syllabus. It's almost like it's an appendage. The PE class is disposable in a lot of ways, and that's something that we need to change as a cultural shift, right? Going back to the book, you have structured it across different dimensions, right? You have space, time, child, content, and facilitator. And you've done it in a way so that people can just pick and choose which section you want to go to depending upon the obstacle you're facing. I love the way that you give real life creative solutions to each problem, potential problem. I'm going to pick one dimension and something that I've recently read that tries to solve it, and I would love for you to pick another dimension and talk about a creative solution that maybe it's either in the book, or you could bring up something that's currently as a light bulb moment in your head. So for me, it's the easiest one. It's space, right? So when we look at cities, and Bangalore is an anomaly in a lot of ways because you have open spaces where kids can play. But you're looking at cities that are overpopulated where you need to optimize spaces for play. And Vijay, you said that you need to have the playground very close to the child so that the child can access it without permission, without escort. They can just go at it very instinctively. I read that in Finland, in Helsinki, the bomb shelters that were built after World War II, there are 5,500 civil defense shelters that were built, have been repurposed as skate parks, as archery ranges, as swimming pools, to the extent that some of the people don't even know that they're bomb shelters. They just come there to play and are now realizing, given the situation that we are in, that they can resist radiation or they may survive a building collapse. That is so creative, right? You're looking at places that don't even count as viable spaces for innovation. What are your ideas and some of the dimensions that you've covered in the book?
Where to go? So I think what you brought out is an interesting point, which is the complete failure of urban planning to account for kids. Urban planning is driven by adults for economic goals and just fails to account for kids. The fact that we can't have kids walk over to play parks, can't have playground nearby is a testament, and this is a global issue. It's not only an India issue. And in fact, it's not only a large city issue, it's a small city issue. So I think there's the voice of the kids is not there. So how do you solve it? The solution that we think work is to embrace the current context. There are two choices, right? Either I change the system, which means go to politics or whatever else, which as a small entrepreneur was not something that was there. Otherwise, okay, this is what I've got. Let's say I've got this much space. What can I do within this? So the interesting thing is kids don't care. These two young boys will be willing to play in a much smaller space than this. They don't need a big playground. They don't need a football ground. They don't need Chinnaswamy Stadium. What they need is the content as to what should they play, need a safe space, maybe some facilitator if at all, some time. So the kids don't have a problem with space. Very often a space problem is an adult problem. Of how do we as adults therefore make it modular, make it safe, make it multi-purpose. If it rains, what do you play? If it doesn't rain, what do you play? If it's too hot, how do I and that's an adult, only adults can solve it. Kids cannot solve it. So problems will be created by adults and then they have to be solved by adults. And to make it safe, modular, multi-purpose is the only way I see it happening. And the other place that we see is schools. So either around your space, in your community, there's some small space, how do you make the most of it? Or else figure out a way to make the most use of limited space in schools. And hence the programs, content, facilitated for that piece.
Have you seen somebody doing it properly? Is there like an example, a positive example you could share?
Oh yeah, I mean, in the place that I live in, and some of my neighbors are here, they're there.
Oh, you're the neighbors? That's great. You got all the kids from your society. That is some connection.
Kind of to come. So, it was originally a tennis court, and there was a fight amongst the residents saying it's a tennis court, you can't play football on it. Because when we bought the flat, it was a tennis court, and my value of my property goes down if I don't call it a tennis court. There are all those. This reality that the economic issues are there. The swimming pool is used by like 20 people the full year, right? And we say no, let's make it a playground. They say no, the swimming pool goes away, my value of my property goes down. These are all adult constructs. I'm not saying they're wrong, but they are there. So how do you engage? So the kids have to engage, and some of us have to engage on behalf of the kids. Because when the kids engage with adults, they're seen as rude. If a kid asks you, I need to play, they're seen as rude, but they are asking for what you would call their rights, right? So how do you engage? So we found a way, long story short, we converted that tennis court into a multi-purpose court. Saurabh was a sports secretary there and so on. And we divided, think of the tennis court, this big court, we divided that into multiple nets. So you could pull a net and have a smaller play space. So small kids can play here, girls can play there, older kids can play there. And we covered the whole thing, because the ball used to go out when these older kids used to play football and somebody would get hurt. We just put the whole net around. Right, and it had a metal thing. My son used to play football and used to bang the ball against and the neighbors would complain of noise. So made it a net. So now noise doesn't come, ball doesn't go out, kids are playing. So the solution, and it didn't cost much. So issue is the willingness, and the idea of the book is that there are people who want to solve this problem, they don't know how to. And hence the toolkit idea that look, if you're stuck solving this problem, have a look. Maybe there are some solutions that might help you.
I'd like to add to Saumil. I live in another apartment complex too, very similar. I had to be on the sports committee to fight for another tennis court to prevent another tower from, it was really that bad. And luckily we got the tennis court, and 3 months, 6 months later, floodlights, everything, and you go post-dinner walk, hardly utilized. Lights are on, we're all paying maintenance, and nobody's actually using it. And then I remember asking a resident that you had supported for this and we got this other court, right? They said, no, that is for the real estate value. That is for amenities for my resale of my apartment. I was like, really? I mean, so all the kids there. So that was exactly like what you're saying. But without it being too, depressing, the good one that I've seen is we used to have a podium walk, and there was, all this, classic thing of there's no space. Where do I walk? Where do I cycle? What do I do? And all that. All it took was for some other committee guy to say, for kids to cycle, 2-3 cans of paint, and they just drew something as cycling path.
Oh, like the lanes.
Lanes, and kids were happily cycling. Today, you'll be surprised that adults are cycling outside the lane. And then now there's a different problem, that how do you get them to follow the rules? I always like ask them, but just remember, you are the guy who's saying there is no space. So I think the solutions are so many. And I want to add one more thing is, yesterday whoever would walk through the Lit Fest, and if you're coming through the back entrance, there is just that open space before you come in. I was actually in the afternoon seeing all the boys playing cricket there. Kids were, they were least bothered. So if some BLF attendee is crossing, they just pause that, bowling delivery, allowed them to go and they played,
Yeah,
right?
I was there. Yeah, I had the same reaction. I was like, please, can you just hold for a second? But I wish you'd written this toolkit earlier, because when we were young, and if my sister's in the audience, she's going to vouch for it, we used to play cricket in the basketball court. And our biggest issue was not that it was a basketball court, it was because the boys would take it. And so we had this girl, I think I was your age a little, and it was a girl versus boy thing, who's going to take the basketball court, and nobody ever stopped us from playing cricket there. It was so natural. We just wanted a space that was well lit, because at night you need that kind of visibility. And so this is so great. It's something that we can all work at, right? So it's not, if you are working at the city level, that's great, but there's something that you all can do back in your societies.
If I can add another point, how many of you have run marathons here? Or, right? I see Barindaji is here. Sorry. So what did adults do as a solution? On a Sunday morning, they blocked roads for 3 hours. They, sought permission from the government and said, guys, run, and by 9 a.m. go home, and we finished, right? I keep thinking, why couldn't we do it at the apartment level for just that one stretch? It's the same thing. So we don't need to run this city stuff and everyone getting medals, and so there is that some aspirational corporates running, right? But it's the same at a 100th level at the space.
So I think the point we're trying to make is that it's possible within the current construct. It is not more space, new space. In the same construct, we've done it in preschools with space half this size. With the right structure, props, safety, and all that, it's possible to do. And kids are more than willing to engage with you. The great part of anything is that here the recipient is very willing and eager.
I'm going to zoom out a little, and I'm going to make a tiny link to competitive sports, just to kind of make this a more expansive conversation. Vijay, in one of the podcasts, you said, I have listened to 6 hours of these guys speaking. I think I heard them in my dreams at some point. You said that when you look at large-scale events, right, when a country hosts a World Cup, the Olympic Games, which is where I've had the fortune to cover certain sports. You look at, and this is just one example, but you can copy paste this for any big event. You look at the Beijing Olympics, and it was a massive success for the country, right? For the hard power, soft power. But you don't see it translating into the well-being of the average person. It doesn't have the health effects, positive health effects on the average individual. And you said that there's a gap between spectator sports and participatory sports. We've come a long way since then, and I do have some examples that were that could be a positive marker given the Paris Olympics. I'll come to that after your responses. But could you talk about some creative ways in which we could have a trickle-down effect, where these mega events leave a positive impact in the community, on the culture of the country as such?
Yeah, I mean, even I was surprised by that research thing that Beijing Olympics after 2008 when they hosted it. I think one of the things, as you said, was for it to trickle down to grassroots and, healthy citizens and, fitter individuals, better society and all that. But Olympics came and went. People watched it, they consumed it, they even picked up a sport for a short period. And when the longitudinal study, a year or two later, I don't think the person is even playing sport anymore. But they continue to follow sport, right? So, I don't know, I think one of the ways to always is, events at the top are great. I mean, nothing against the events at the top. Definitely inspirational value is higher, it spurs more interest. But can we also go bottom up? School sport leading to that, whether they make it or not. Quick example I can think of, I always think of, since we're in Bangalore, and Rahul Dravid wrote us, nice enough to write the foreword for us for a book. He's from St. Joseph's. And I think St. Joseph's schools, the interest not just in sport, in all other activities, right, was so high that it has produced so many Olympians than even, I think, some other small country somewhere else. And it all started with the after-school program of mandatory, you have to play a sport or a guitar or hockey or whatever for an hour before you go home. So I think to tap into it is more of a sporting cultural question, more than the trickle down.
Is it the one that's here in Indiranagar? That's the thing. They have like big hoardings where even if you're not part of the school culture, you can sign up and use that tennis court. I always pass by St. Joseph's and I look at that.
It's also the school which is there in the center of the city near Cubbon Park right here. So it's about mandating at that level, and everyone should play. So it's not such a big deal, right? And I don't think we've even spoken to I don't think at some point you actually got into that sport thinking you'll be an elite cricketer for the country. It organically happened. And I don't think it is because of a World Cup hosted in India that you went and picked up a bat, right? So.
Yeah.
So, Nitin Pai of Takshashila Institute had a nice summary as to why people talk about Olympics or any large-scale events, right? One is, assumption is there's a legacy of health and well-being of the population, there's economic growth, right? And there's national pride. There are three reasons why typically any country hosts large-scale events, right? But the commercial interests are so strong from a sponsorship, construction, all of this perspective. I think we need to acknowledge, in our view, that the connection that will lead to kids playing is a tenuous one and has not been backed by data. Paris Olympics and now LA Olympics are talking about using existing infrastructure. So they stopped, people used to earlier invest $2-3 billion in upgrading capex, and now they stopped doing it, saying we'll only use, like LA has said, we'll only use the existing college infrastructure, we're not investing in any new, right? So the legacy pieces have had some questions around that, what's called legacy effect in Olympics, right? But we have to ask the question, who cares, right? If a Usain Bolt is running, who's caring about a kid who's running in the government school? Who should care? End of the day, it's come to the community. Either as parents and local leaders, we care enough or we don't. Expecting a Coca-Cola or a Visa or a FIFA or a IOC to care about my neighborhood kid, it's not going to happen. It's just too far away. Instead of trickle down, then again you're going back to this notion of waiting for their largesse. Right? This is important enough, let's solve it here. And the solution is not difficult. Demanding more of a school PE class, what's so difficult about that? Would you accept if in a maths class your child was told, oh, you're not good enough for maths, so please sit on the side. Maths is not for you. People will pull their kid out of school. But that's what's happening in sports, in PE. That, oh, sports is not for you, sit on the side. So if you accept it's part of education, the solution is right here. We don't need largesse, we don't need brands and sponsors. And who gets hurt if the kids don't play? They have to step up. Is it parents? Is it school leaders? Is it community? Some people who get hurt have to step up. Expecting some other people who have commercial interests to step in is not going to happen.
I definitely agree with that, but I'm going to push back a little bit. I think when the community makes a case for it, like they put their foot down, and I think it also depends on how community arranges around the politics of that particular country. I'm going to talk about Paris, and I'm sure it was not completely successful. The public there made certain demands for the Olympics to come to them, right? The River Seine was not swimmable at all. And they said that if the Olympics come, we want this river swimmable. And that's a huge investment. That's a huge capital investment to clean up a whole river. But that's the legacy of the Olympic Games. Today, the Seine is swimmable. You can go and swim, and they do it. It's a climate adaptation measure, so it's really hot. You go and swim in the river. But it's also for young kids to just frolic. They don't clean the Seine because they want the next big French swimmer.
Sonali, tell me, why should the river Seine be cleaned because of an Olympics?
Oh,
so that's a different issue.
Yeah, it's a different issue. You can look at it. Yeah, you can look at it from that way. But because the country is already bidding, right? India is already bidding for a lot of mega events. It is up to us in certain communities to ask for that. That you are bringing the 2036 Olympics, the Commonwealth Games. But what are you going to leave behind? The CNG passes are not working.
These kids don't need big stadium. They need a playground near their house.
Yeah, but do they need public,
That's
public courts?
That's the kind of legacy.
Yeah, so like Bangalore has a lot of public courts. I play tennis at a public court here, but we don't have public courts in a lot of other cities. So I'm saying there's one thing to consider. France also mandated 30 minutes of physical activity in schools. Leading up to the games, right? Very small thing that they just reached out to the schools and asked that 30 minutes of habitual physical activity has to be included. Now, I'm not, as I said, they may not have been successful, but I see something to look forward to. I see a beacon on the horizon. There's intent there to have a trickle-down effect. And I think we cannot ignore that, because we are a country with huge ambitions. We are wanting to host the Olympics. We are wanting to host the Commonwealth Games. Going back to play beyond sport as a social design construct, right? I would like for you to talk about instances of play where you have addressed issues of inequality, of access, because if you talk about a child's right to play, it has to be inclusive. You don't exist in a silo, right? It intersects with a child's right to fresh air, a child's right to safe and urban environments. So I'm going to give you an example that was actually exhibited at the Paris Games, but there's this social designer called Gabriel Fontana. I think he's in your lineage actually. He has designed a game called Multiform, where there are 3 teams participating and they wear transformable uniforms. And the referee at different points of the game tells you to change your uniform. Right. So that changes the team composition and size. And the kids learn how to be part of the majority, how to be part of the minority, how to exist and raise your voice when you are just a few people, how to work with gender, how to work when you are not the strongest in the court. So that is, he's not addressing sport to be competitive. He's teaching kids to be part of the society in different ways. Is there an example that comes to your mind where play addresses inequalities, where play is a social design tool?
Sure. I mean, we started Sports Village 2003, and the first time we had people from Dream a Dream bring those kids into our, they work with underprivileged kids. And ours, we had an academy model where, let's say, elite kids or his kids were paying some money. And Vishal Talreja was a dear friend of mine. He brought kids from the school, government school. And we had a cricket game. So day one, you could see kids wearing Nike and all the other brands on this side, and the government school kids barefoot. They both run. By the way, both the set of kids run fantastically as they come into the playground. That emotion is the same. And then you can see the difference in the equipment and the apparel and all that. So we had one match one day, and there was this us against them. After a few weeks, we had one more game. So they came again. And by now, they have figured out, oh, that guy is a good bowler, this guy is... And slowly, by the third game, you could see friendships happening. And the best part was that the government school kids realized that these kids are just like us. Right? It's just what they call accident of birth that they are here. So I think that notion of saying, hey, I'm as good as these kids. Play gives you that thing, and we saw that. We saw that at scale across over the last 22 years.
For this question I can go on for a long time, but yeah, sport as a tool, in corporate annual days, I just want to ask a question. How many of you have seen an elite athlete come to your event and then he or she becomes the guest speaker? Anyone here, right? So all the stuff that we don't want to let kids play, we want them to focus on acads and all that. And eventually I find it quite, this is hypocritical that you're actually again looking at them and then questions are asked. The corporates actually ask this athlete, how do you perform well under pressure? How do you collaborate? How do you communicate? Where's your strategic thinking? So most of the time these athletes are at loss of words, if you notice, right? Forget them, they're actually thinking of that playground, like he's saying, somewhere we collaborated, right? So the value of it is so high that we have minimized or limited it to about this medals and stuff. But the lessons of it are like far reaching almost, or at least for me. I mean, I think I'm biased by my brain doesn't operate. Whether it's resilience, all the things are just automatically taught as a kid, right? And if you don't have that experience, yeah.
So we have an impact report on our website which has stuff about social emotional skills, conflict resolution, girl empowerment, community engagement, all through sports as a tool. So play is an excuse to bring people together, and then let's talk about what you want to do. Right? So think of this as a magnet. Kids are engaged, they are there. Now what can we do?
I love the fact that you had a Get Kids to Play summit and you had kids on stage at different levels. They had better.
That sounds like they should be there.
No, they are there, but you don't see them being present or being included in a lot of big summits and conferences on sport. And I saw somebody who is playing for their school, somebody who's not, and you talk about trivial challenges which are very big or looming in the mind of the student, which is basically like, my parents want me to get marks and they don't want me to be competitive. my sister used to play cricket, but then again, at some point, your parents come and say that's not a viable option for the female cricketer, which is going to change now.
Yes.
But there was a time when that was what your parents said, keeping your well-being in mind. I will also cite another example because it just doesn't use the framework of sport. It's by an architect called Soumya Wali, and she created the children's courtroom at the Constitutional Hill in Johannesburg, which is basically a small, very furniture that can be dismantled and taken and transported elsewhere. And she built a courtroom so that kids can learn about justice, they can learn about rights, equality, and it also inadvertently prepares child witnesses for the court. And I love that. And it's actually built for Play Africa. It's not built for a legal firm or a law firm. It's built for Play Africa to teach children about justice and equality. So that's another form of play, right? So please, I would love for you to reach out and do your research and find out different forms of play to address different issues that you think exist or are prevalent in society. I want to leave some time for the audience. So before I close, I have two questions. I think one of you can answer one and the other. The first one is, in the facilitator section, we are kind of emphasizing on the school leader, on the civic engagement leader, or the parent to facilitate play. But there are occasions where children play despite of adults, not because of them, right? So who decides what play is? Do children decide? Do parents decide? Do leaders decide? How do they decide? And number two, your book's been out for a while, right? If you had to rewrite any part of the book, given the response that you've received, which part of the book would you rewrite?
I'll take the first easier one. So I think we had an advisor called Dr. George Selig had an interesting way of defining this. He said there are some things that adults lead and kids follow. Values in your home, maybe the religion you choose to follow, whatever. There's some things that adults have to lead and kids have to follow. There's something where kids lead and adults have to support and follow. And play is one essential piece of that. So you follow the child, you support the child. So it's very simple. So if the kids are playing, how can I support and make it safe? That's my job as an adult. Within this construct, right? If the kids are willing to play, how do I support it? So it's the kids who decide.
Yeah, that's why it's facilitating, not leading.
Yes, it's facilitating.
To answer the second question, I don't think I would change anything. When me and Saumil, I think we have always, actually we have too much information and it was only 200 pages. So we had to, I don't know how much we have not written. And so the 5-chapter construct remains the same. I think that's sort of a timeless thing. It's the content for each of the chapters that needs to be updated, and we've missed quite a few stories. So I don't know if the audience knows, so we had to literally start with a podcast the following year to get other experts to be involved on the Get Kids to Play platform kind of thing, because we couldn't fit all of them in the book. So that's the way it keeps going.
I think we have to know that the book is called Get Kids to Play and not Get Kids to Win. And we were talking with Vijay and he said we need to get a book out that said Get Kids to Play, so get adults to read. So the book's available in bookstores, and I hope all of you can reach out to the authors. They'll be available for signings afterwards and your questions. But we have 7 minutes on the clock. Are there any questions in the audience? And if the kiddos have a question, we'll give you preference, right? Okay, you don't have to be partial to Saumil uncle. You can ask the other uncle also on the panel. Anybody?
My office neighbor is here.
Yeah, hi Vijay. Hi Saumil. One of the observations I think you must be remembering, 1983 Kapil Dev lifting up the World Cup changed the whole perception in the country. I was a hockey player and a basketball player, and my friends shifted en masse to cricket. So your observation that major incidents don't percolate, I think this was a major difference. I don't know about 2011 win, but 1983 did a huge change. What do you have to say about that?
I have a great question. Thanks for coming also, sir. Also, I think if you go back, India was more a hockey playing country, like you're saying. Maybe it shifted from hockey to cricket also before other things. Yeah. But I think that's going to be difficult to control at each time in an era where one sport is doing better. I've seen the same from cricket to badminton as well. Once, and a number of girls taking up badminton, has also increased. So I think it has to do with some sort of a, like he said, national inspirational angle. But I think again at the grassroots, it's also available access to things, and it has to practically work out, right?
If I may, since I made the statement, let me respond. I think there is an inspirational value to professional sports, elite sports. Winning tournaments is fantastic. There is an inspirational value to it. The question is then what? And how do you at scale continue that momentum, right? Let's think about choice, right? If I had 50,000 crores to invest, should I invest in improving playground near my house, or should I build a stadium? Should I invest in better schools where kids come in to play for life, or should I build a stadium? When I place it like this, the answers become very obvious. But when I place it in the national context that, oh, we are the proud people who are hosting Olympics, it becomes a very different framing of the same situation. Because the contrast is not being presented. As against what?
Okay, do we have anybody on this side? Can you give it to the lady there? Yeah, we can go to you afterwards. Yeah.
What seems to me is it's a very complex, you can look at it from various angles, right? From physical access to pedagogy to curriculum. But for me, what seems is the biggest thing is the intent. When you try to do it at your apartment, they say, what about property prices? So this is, I don't know if you look at it as an elephant in the room, but this is the culture. As Indians, we are not steeped in a culture of sport at all. How do you break this? Is it some advocacy, or what else can organizations like you do? I know it may be impossible even, but is there some active, deliberate advocacy that we can do?
So first of all, I've seen this across the world. It's not an Indian problem. It is an India problem, but it's a global problem also. Countries are struggling with it. The highest winning Olympic medal winning countries have the highest rate of obesity. So it's not an India problem. I mean, India has its problem, but this is not the only unique problem. I think the answer in our view is to work with schools. In our view, there's no other solution where you have access to kids at scale throughout the year on year for the foundational years of their life. And where it's mandatory. There's no choice. The question is, what are parents and people demanding from the school for the experience for the child to be fun, inclusive, and so on. Once that happens, so it's not advocacy as much as just demanding what you're supposed to get, by the way. Your child is supposed to get an inclusive physical education program. Just as a child is supposed to get an inclusive maths education program. How do we demand at whatever level of education you are working with?
Yeah. Before we take the next question, I spotted my sister who used to play cricket and had to give it up. And she was the one who helped me hog the basketball court and not let the boys play. All for people who can organize within themselves. Anybody else? Should we go really up to the back because they don't get a chance to speak? Can we get them?
Sure. We have another mic there.
Yeah.
Hey, hi, Saumil, Anand here. I wanted to ask you about, things like lock and key, chain, those kind of stuff. How do you incorporate it both into apartment complexes and schools? Those are stuff, gallery, lock and key, chain, gone out of the way, and we can find out some
lovely question, and as just as a maybe interesting trivia, Indian sports are the most infra and budget efficient games in the world. All other sports require a certain very formal structure. Basketball has to have this, football has to have this, your kho-kho, kabaddi, lock and chain, lot of stuff. I think the way to do it is to design those games and reintroduce them as fun games for kids. If kids are having fun, they'll play it. Very often the problem is the facilitator is not making it fun. Facilitator is making it like instruction. So we have to play with the kids to make sure they engage with the game. If you found those games fun as kids, chances are these kids will find them too. But we just haven't presented them well enough.
Pitu was so cool. Sun, moon, lava, earth. I don't know if somebody has played that game. That was so cool. Can we go to the lady here, please? And then on the left, right in front, fourth row.
Thank you very much for talking about sports and also corporate world, because I'm from the corporate world. One of the things parents, and we do hire a lot of people at a very senior level, one of the things people haven't realized is just academia won't get you into the door. It might get you into some UPSC, whatever, but in the corporate world, seriously, it's sports we look at also, because sports is team playing, sports is strategy, sports is evaluation of risk, all these things. In fact, I've never hired a person who does not play some kind of a sport. So this is where I would like to give a message. What you're doing is so important. Even in our apartment, I am advocating for some kind of sports, not just for kids, but even for adults. Because that prevents dementia, that prevents fatty liver, all sorts of things are there. So please, parents have to understand, just academia won't get your kid into the door. It will only maybe give you bus ticket, but you want to have a plane ride, you better go for sports also.
So next book will be about getting adults to play.
Yeah, I don't think we have more time for questions, but can we have a huge round of applause for the authors here? You can bring your round of questions to the book signing line. I hope you pick up the book. You provide your encouragement to writers like Saumil and Vijay. They're so great, and please go listen to their podcast. I've listened to too much of it, so I'm going to take a little break and return to it. But please listen to their podcast and follow their work, because they're doing something that's very important. And the next time you see an event happening in your city, in your township, you know what to do. You know who to go to and ask for organizational help for your kids, for your school kids, for the people, if you're a teacher, for your school, right? So I hope you take something off from this session, and thank you so much for giving us your Sunday. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sonali. Take one.